Behavioral.
So good.
Is there anybody who did not put their address for a credit card that they're using? Everybody? Oh. Okay, then when you're done, pass it to Samantha. Now I'm going to teach you about where empowerment dialogue comes out of, which is something called Gestalt therapy. Now, when I was in high school, I saw something on TV about something called encounter groups. And people were kind of encounter groups. And they were acknowledging each other. And my dad came home, I said, Dad, I know what I want to do. There's this thing on TV called encounter groups or sensitivity training, right? And he looked at me and he goes, There, don't you know that's what I do? I said, the stuff on TV? Yeah. Turns out my dad was one of the first people to go through National Training Laboratories, which was created after World War II to help soldiers go through PTSD syndrome. And that is the beginning of all this kind of work, okay? Along with Synanon, who was also doing some stuff in the early days with that kind of thing, and a lot of things came out of that. Anyway, so then my dad helped. I read about a school in Time magazine called Johnston College, where they literally got together with teachers and students, and they spent 2 weeks in the mountains creating the college. Decided that we wouldn't have grades, we would have evaluations, and every semester the students and the teachers would put up on the board what they want to learn and what they want to teach, and they try to mesh them together, and
Wow.
it was really fascinating. Anyway, it was written up in Time magazine, and I wanted to go to that school, so my dad helped me to get accepted. And while I was a freshman at Johnson College, I had classes in Gestalt therapy, psychodrama, transactional analysis, all the hottest stuff at the time. And I found out that Fritz Perls was this unbelievable genius who created Gestalt therapy. He found out that when you put two chairs together and you let the person talk out loud to themselves, it brings things from subconscious to conscious. So I'm going to just give you some of the principles from a book which I've always recommended for people who are in any kind of healing or coaching field, that you really get this book and you read it. It's called Gestalt Therapy Verbatim by Fritz Perls. And it literally describes the first 40 pages is completely profound. And then it just describes him working with people and what he used to do. So I'm going to give you some of the principles.
Can you give us that name again, please?
What?
Can you give us the title again, please?
Gestalt Therapy Verbatim by Fritz Perls. And I don't know if they still have them, but up at the University of Utah, they used to have videos of him actually doing Gestalt therapy with people. So, way before EST or any of the other trainings promoted the idea that you create your world, Fritz Perls promoted that idea, because the word Gestalt, there is no English translation, but what it means is that if there's a foreground and a background, that your perception will always bring to the foreground whatever it is you believe you need.
Say that again.
Okay, there's a background and there's a foreground.
Okay.
And by the nature of perception, you always bring to the foreground whatever you believe you need.
Okay.
So I'm at a party and I'm single, so what do I notice? Single women. I'm at a party and I'm a real estate agent. What do I notice? People who might be interested in, you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you see whatever you think you need. Okay? So Fritz Perls was the first one to make popular, I mean, it had been around before but not popular, the idea of projection. What I added to that concept, because back then they used to believe that some things were projection and some things were not. And I brought to the idea that everything is a projection. Top dog, underdog. Parent, child. Underdog wants safety, top dog wants movement. The continuum of awareness. Fritz Perls used to have you sit in a chair in front of him, and then he would have you be in the now. And that's all he would do. He would just say, be in the now. And you describe whatever is happening. Now this, and now that, and now that. And eventually, it literally leads to a breakthrough. By just being in the now. Organism and environment, homeostasis. Every organism must get what it needs from the environment. So, for example, you're always trying to reach homeostasis, which means get what you need and create a balance. But if you're out of contact with your environment, like when you do your old ways, you're out of contact with your environment, which means you cannot get what you need from the environment. It means that you're like a flower that can't get water. Does that make sense? Okay. To realize your potential, you need to live and review each second afresh. That's a quote from Fritz Perls. Guilt is unexpressed resentment. When I teach people how to do breakthroughs up at Law of a Breakthrough Retreat, I show them how guilt is a nice guy's way of resenting. And underneath the guilt is resentment, and underneath the resentment is there because they perceive pressure. And underneath the pressure is self-betrayal. They wouldn't perceive pressure unless they were selling out. You don't create pressure until the moment you consider selling out. There is no pressure. There's no such thing as pressure. When you're 2 years old and you're honoring your truth and you don't know how not to honor your truth, there's no pressure. Now, this became a poster in the 60s that was pretty popular, except that they cut off the very last line, which pissed me off. So here's the quote. I am I and you are you. I am not in this world to live up to your expectations, and you are not in this world to live up to mine. If by chance we find each other, then it's beautiful. Now this is what they cut off. If not, it can't be helped. He got across the idea that frustration is the motivator. The wisest parents are those that are very wise about how they frustrate their children. Best example I have of that in modern day is Nintendo. Any video game is simply a way of putting the right amount of frustration. If the puzzle's too hard, they get frustrated, they collapse. If it's too easy, it's boring. But Nintendo is the right amount of frustration, so they keep going. Keep going. Oh boy, I have to pee now. Get back. So, and they keep going. Maturity is the transcendence from environmental support to self-support. When you're a baby, you're completely dependent on the environment, aren't you? As you mature, you become more independent. You don't rely so much on the environment. And the more mature somebody becomes, the more they become self-reliant, not dependent on others. Okay? Get a partner, share with your partner any thoughts about Fritz Perls' contribution. You won't have long.
Still one.
Did you read that? Repeat that again.
Yeah, I know, it's like you're right.
They don't.
Thank you.
I was trying to figure peer pressure.
What's that got for you?
And her oldest son ended up joining the military, so they fit in really well because they're very competitive.
It's self-made. Now, it took in my mind. How was that so?
Okay, wrap it up.
Michelle, that's where it pushed.
You know, I love it how my favorite books are the Carlos Castaneda books, and every few years I'll read them again, and it's amazing to me that every few years it's like, this was not in the book.
Where's this chapter come from?
That's how eternal truths are. I love it when Peter asked Jesus, what is truth? And Jesus said, truth is what is eternal. Everything else falls away. And with these kind of principles, I like the way Werner Erhard said it when he said, these are principles over which you will never get. Just about the time